You know, these glasses are causing me a heck of a problem.
What's the problem?
I don't know, but...
Can you see okay out of those glasses?
No, but these glasses are okay. They're fine. Not a problem.
Seems a little contradictory.
Welcome to Progressive Soup. We do love our contradictions, especially when they come from people in high places. Tonight we have Al Robinson as our guest. We're going to talk about the Danbury 11 case and some lovely testimony from our own mayor and others, and how that seems to have generated some controversy and perhaps blew a case for them. First of all, Al Robinson, introduce yourself. You've been here many times.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for allowing me to come back on and talk about this important issue. Now, I've been doing my website, Hat City Blog, since July of 2005. And the one case that attracted me more than anything else in the last 5 years would have to be this particular case regarding what is commonly known as the Danbury 11 case. Now, the Danbury 11 case, make a long story short, day laborers at Kennedy Park were standing, waiting for work.
As they have done for many years now.
Many years. And a vehicle drove up and picked up a number of day laborers, promising them work. And instead of receiving work, they received a trip down to the police station where they were later booked and arrested on immigration violations. There was a civil lawsuit that came out of this because the plaintiffs alleged that the city of Danbury was involved with this raid, and not only were they involved with this raid, they were involved with detaining people without probable cause and things of that nature.
I was going to ask you who actually was involved in this gathering up of these folks. Who was involved?
Well, it has been. We found out later in the court documents, years after this particular thing went down, that not only was that this was conducted by the Danbury Police Department. The Danbury police officer posed undercover as a contractor and drove the van that picked up these day laborers. So Danbury was heavily involved in this particular incident.
Who else was it? Was the federal government involved too?
There were people for the Immigration and Customs Enforcement at the police station awaiting the van that had the day laborers in it.
I'd like to rewind and clarify a point. The first point is that at that time, the city of Danbury did not have a contract with ICE. This was the biggest large-scale raid, and certainly the only one of this type that the city of Danbury had seen in probably forever.
That we know of.
That we know of, exactly,
like
that has really hit the press.
Yeah.
But at that point, there was no agreement between the city of Danbury and the federal agency of ICE. So this was not done under that 287G ICE access contract that the mayor then afterwards, very much pushed for.
That's important to distinguish. The ICE Access 287G partnership between the city of Danbury and the federal government happened sometime in 2008, early 2008. I think it was actually February 2008, although I could be wrong.
It was past sometime before then, but
it was definitely very much past. This particular incident that happened down at Kennedy Park happened in September of 2006. So you can do the math. This particular thing that happened at that particular point in time, the city of Danbury did not have a partnership with the Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
So therefore, no authority to be conducting immigration arrests.
So how exactly did the federal agents become involved?
Well,
who invited them in? Were they invited in?
Well, that's a whole. There's a lot of facts in this case that it took a long time to come out. And the funny thing is, there was never actually a case. This thing was eventually settled, but because this happened so long ago, what I wanted to do for your viewing audience is just give them a brief trip back down memory lane. Let them go back, because, again, I was there covering this since the day it happened. So from the day it happened to the day this thing has been settled, I have been keeping an eye on this case for a couple of very good reasons. Number one being, I knew at that time I did not believe Mayor Boughton when he stated on numerous occasions to numerous journalists that the city of Danbury played no role whatsoever in that raid that happened at Kennedy Park.
There was some suspicion on your part back then.
Immediate. You know, and there's a lot of reasons that, you know, I know we'll have a long discussion here about this particular case, but I want to go back and just give people a better understanding about how enraged the immigrant community was about this particular incident that happened down there. So I have some video footage from 2006 from a press conference that was held right after the day laborers were arrested, as well as some footage from the attorneys for the day laborers who filed the Freedom of Information request asking the city of Danbury for documents pertaining to the Danbury 11 case. The city did not comply very well, so there was a lawsuit filed to get those documents. So if you want to queue it up, we got it all set up in the back room, and we can go to the footage.
Okay, here we
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, and thank you for coming. My name is Alyssa DeRosa, and I'm a representative from the Danbury Peace Coalition. Last week, September 19th, ICE agents disguised as contractors 11 day laborers into getting into an unmarked van with promises of jobs. Instead of work, these innocent men were taken to the Danbury police station, followed by Hartford for questioning. It has since been brought to our attention that the Danbury 11 are being held in Boston, where as of Saturday, they have not yet been formally charged. Most of these men have been unable to speak to their worried family members. Imagine your father, uncle, brother, cousin not coming home one evening and not knowing where they are or if they're safe. These people did nothing wrong. The ICE was not searching for criminals, but randomly selected these men who just wanted to work. Unfortunately, this is not unprecedented. The ICE has been using this same ruse all over the country to a degree not seen until now, intimidating and harassing the immigrant communities who have been standing up for their rights. In Georgia, 120 were taken. 875 innocent people in 5 states in the Deep South have been detained by these agents. Over 21,000 have been detained this year. It will not end with the events of last week. We as a community must stand up now. Not only has our city violated the trust of our vast immigrant community, but they have breached the confidence of all the people of the city of Danbury by using fear and intimidation at its worst and allowing this terrible tragedy to occur. This Saturday, September 30th at 12:30, the Danbury Coalition of the Rights of Immigrants, the Ecuadorian Civic Center, and the Danbury Peace Coalition will be hosting an event starting at Kennedy Park. From the park, we will peacefully march to City Hall, where we will picket to demand the stop of the deportations and to free the Danbury 11.
Well, we know that the Department of Homeland Security was aware of the city of Danbury's campaign to harass, intimidate, and even drive out immigrants. We know they're aware of it because they received letters from the mayor, from former Representative Nancy Johnson, asking for increased enforcement. So to the extent that ICE, that the Department of Homeland Security, allowed themselves to be willing participants in this campaign, is what we're trying to figure out here. We sent a standard request under the Freedom of Information Act to the Department of Homeland Security about a month and a half ago. They had 30 days to reply. They didn't reply. Really, we're left with no other option but to sue, because the community organizations have a right and really need to know what it is the federal government is doing here in Danbury.
Can you give us any information on the 11 people who were detained? How many people are released? How many people are still in jail right now?
Certainly. The 11 were split up in a number of different detention centers, and so went before a number of different judges, so they had very different results. 2 of them were actually denied bond, which means that they still had the right to continue fighting out their case, but from within a Texas jail cell. So, perhaps understandably, they decided not to, and they decided to allow the government to remove them. I don't actually know if that removal has been carried out yet or not. I rather suspect by now it has. The other 9 were released on bond. Some of them were released on really high bonds, as much as $15,000. But thanks to the level of community support, they were able to pull together that kind of money through really admirable grassroots fundraising. And the fact that the judges awarded them bond means that the judges decided this person is not going to, disappear, move to Queens, and never be heard from again. This person's going to stick around and fight their case. And the reason they decided that is in part because of the level of community activism around this issue.
Okay. Well, look, there you have it. That video footage, again, is from September 2006. The first part we saw was from September 2006, was a press conference held for the Danbury 11. Later on, there was a rally for the Danbury 11 that happened a few days later at City Hall. And the second video clip we saw was from one of the attorneys for the Yale law students who was representing the Danbury 11. And what they said in the video clip there is that they were holding they were trying to obtain from the city and from the federal government information in regards to this raid. And they had to file a lawsuit because they weren't getting the compliance that they wanted.
If I might say, that's pretty standard for Department of Homeland Security. They don't like to turn over their information. They're not the most transparent agency out there. So
make a long story short, during that December footage that you saw there, and this right here is pretty important. When that December press conference of 2006, the mayor for the city of Danbury said repeatedly to multiple media outlets, and when I mean multiple, I mean Channel 30, Channel 8, Mark Spencer from the Hartford Current, and there might be even other media outlets out there.
But on a number of occasions.
On a number of occasions, different reporters. And that's pretty important to bring up. He said that the city of Danbury played no part in this raid.
Well, that's good. That's
in fact,
good to know.
He said he didn't even know about it until after it occurred, in fact.
And if you saw that video clip, again, going back to the first press conference, even the people, the activists for the Danbury 11, the people who came out and said, look, we're outraged, they said federal agents posed as contractors drove a van. Even back then, nobody knew that the city of Danbury played any part in this particular action.
And they did?
Well, because of the efforts of the Yale attorneys, and I have to tip my hats off to them, they did a courageous job in pressing forward with this suit because it showed all the details and all the dirty laundry from the city of Danbury was exposed to the public. The city of Danbury did play a part in this raid, in this raid that happened early in the morning of September 2006. They played a part so significant that, they drove the van, for instance. The undercover officer in the van driving the vehicle was not a federal agent. It was an undercover police officer from the city of Danbury.
And again, it's important to point out, they did it without authorization to perform immigration arrests.
Right. So, that's rather significant. You're playing a real significant role. Again, the agents for ICE
drive the van.
You're driving the van.
So nobody showed up at the police department that morning and said, "Oh, by the way, we're from Customs. Joe, you drive the van."
Well, look, again, it's pretty laughable if you think about it. This raid happened early in the morning. When I mean early in the morning, probably before 7 o'clock in the morning. So it isn't like the feds came in at 4 o'clock in the morning and said, "Hey."
A lot of forethought involved.
There had to have been prior planning to this because you have an undercover police officer driving a vehicle up to Kennedy Park, parking at a specific location at Kennedy Park, knowing that he's going to pick up certain individuals or people at Kennedy Park.
Yeah.
Get them in the van, and then drive them to the police station where ICE agents are waiting for them. that's not only you're participating in this thing, there's prior planning into this as well.
And I would like to halt at that point and say that, one thing that we didn't really do a good job in running through the case, one of the reasons people were so upset is because out of hundreds or something day laborers that meet down there every day, how did they even know that anybody was undocumented? So what authorization would they have to do an immigration raid on a place where they don't even know if anybody has documents or not?
Well, that comes down, that comes to why eventually the civil lawsuit, which was filed in September 2007, was done. One of the points that the plaintiffs raised in the lawsuit is like, you had no probable cause, you had no warrant to do this. This was, how are you to know that I am an undocumented person that you're picking up? How did you know who I am? And then charge me with a federal
profiling.
Well, that goes down to racial profiling.
Is it possible that somehow they knew that the 11 guys that came over to that van would all be undocumented workers? Were they all undocumented workers?
Well, again, you don't know who's documented or who's undocumented. You just can't look at somebody and say, well, you're undocumented. Well, the xenophobes in our society say you can look at a certain person and say, hey, I know who's documented, I know who's undocumented.
I think it has something to do with the color of the skin, but that's another story.
That's a whole different matter. But that's the problem, and that's why we have, certain rights. Such as, you can't do things like go up to somebody and just do a
pretext?
Pretext arrest or a racially profiled thing. You can't profile people in this country. And that's what was done. And it was done not by the feds, but by the feds with the assistance of the Danbury Police Department.
No, I find this
and that's
all
the problem.
Not laughable. Laughable is the wrong word to use. I find this rather sad because I'm, as I've mentioned on the show more than once, some second-generation Irish American, and my grandparents came here illegally, didn't come through Ellis Island, and at any given time back then, when Ireland was poor and they had a potato famine, they had a lot of reasons why Irish people came to the United States to find work and then ultimately brought their families behind them. At any given time, just in the city of Boston, there were on average, 1 million illegal Irish
There's still 50,000 in the U.S. today.
Yeah.
I had likened it recently. I said, it all comes down to stereotypes. Me being Irish as well, I said to somebody who was arguing, but when they actually did arrest these people, they supposedly found that they didn't have documents, so it wasn't a wrong arrest. And I said, well, I'm Irish. If a cop is to follow me to a bar based on stereotypes of Irish people drinking a lot, and every night go to a bar to find, to see if I'm drinking, and then pull me over, and the one night that I'm over the limit, he's still racially profiling me to be following me to a bar every night just because I'm Irish and there's a stereotype about Irish people. It's the same situation. It comes down to stereotyping and racial profiling.
And again, this, and there's a lot of factors in this particular case, and I try to make this as simple as possible. And I'm just saying, let's look at the city's response to this, because my main argument is not necessarily the case, but the way the city, in particular, the mayor of the city of Danbury responds to issues of immigration, especially when he's questioned on his stance on immigration.
Now,
in this particular instance, he said to the residents of the city of Danbury on multiple occasions to different reporters that Danbury played no part in this raid. And now it comes back that not only we played a part in this raid, you said certain things under your...
Part and parcel, it seems.
Yeah, it's pretty... We had a pretty significant role in this raid. And, the end factor is that now the city of Danbury just forked over $400,000 for this particular situation. And if we felt so strongly that we didn't participate or play any role in this raid and we were right in what we did, why did you settle for close to $500,000?
And
now, the idea that if the federal government, if the customs enforcement was involved in this lawsuit, which I'm presuming they were because they were involved in the raid, they've got a lot of attorneys on their behest. They have a lot of leverage, a lot of means to fight a case and win a case. It didn't have to even be so much Danbury spending what I believe at last count was about $1 million of taxpayer money.
Well, we don't know. The facts and the figures in regards to how much the city of Danbury forked over is still up in dispute.
We don't know because that's all hidden in the, the devil's in the detail.
The only way I'll know, the only way the public should know, is not listening to the mayor at this point, because in my opinion, he can't be trusted in anything in regards to this case. The only way we'll truly know is by doing a Freedom of Information request with the city of Danbury, and ask for all the attorney fees and do a calculation of all that together, such as the case that the chairperson of the Democratic Town Committee here in Danbury did with the firefighter lawsuit. And we found out how much money was spent in that matter. And if you want to use that as a bar, I could say easily we might be well over the $1 million limit in terms of legal fees towards this case, in which, again, the mayor said on many occasions that the city of Danbury played no role. We're going to fight this thing vigorously. We were in the right, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Well, in the end, you just say, well, we better settle. And you just settled. And you know, he's going around right now saying, well, we settled because the insurance company told us it's the best thing to do. And I'm like, there's been plenty of other cases in the city of Danbury where we fought
tooth and nail.
fought tooth and nail and won.
When you're on the side of right, when right's with you, you fight.
There's an old slab of concrete over there where it's now a hockey rink. And if anybody knows the Arquette case, you know, the city of Danbury fought tooth and nail on that particular matter and would not stop, and because they knew they were in the right. And if you know you're in the right on certain matters, sometimes it's worth it to fight, especially something as high profile as immigration, one of the cornerstones of this particular mayor's resume. And he, you know, heaven forbid he gets tarnished by a bunch of students for Yale who said he did some wrongdoing.
Yeah, you know, two important things to realize. The first thing is that Mayor, when he says, you know, the main part of his resume is immigration issues, this is a mayor that puts himself up as an expert on immigration nationwide. And this case garnered nationwide attention, and it was at a time where immigration issues were coming to such a forefront nationwide that, you know, to back off now and say, I'm just going to settle this, you know, years after the case seems a little bit bizarre.
Yes, and again, this is the mayor, as you correctly stated, back in 2005 when he started up all this dust up and made Danbury look like the armpit of Connecticut. He had no problem going on CNN, Lou Dobbs, or any media outlet that would, you know, take his sound bite. And he was out there going on and on and on about immigration.
Lou Dobbs is being a great one for grandstanding.
Well, he flip-flopped too, though.
walking over hardworking.
Well, I mean, this guy was on. He had no problem going on TV, beating his chest, you know, saying I'm the immigration guy. And so when this particular matter went down, he was still out there beating his chest because who knew that the actions that happened in September of 2006 and the Freedom of Information request from a bunch of Yale law students that he said, I quote, don't have anything better to do with their time, you know, are out here looking through his closet for you know the details of this particular matter.
No,
he had no idea that
apparently they found a couple of things, didn't they?
Well, he didn't know 4.5 years later that it would wind up being you know, somebody. These Yale law students would just continually be on him, constantly looking for the details of this case, and then years later down the road, we find out details about this particular case that we just didn't know about back then, much more.
Now, David brought up a good point, too, about, you know, the veracity of Boughton's claim that we just settled because, you know, it was advised by our lawyers. The fact is, ICE does not have a habit of settling cases. The Department of Homeland Security does not have a record of settling cases. They've got the best attorneys, you know, in the nation.
Better that, they have a limitless pool of money.
Exactly. And yet they paid out $250 grand on top of the $400 grand that the city's paying out. ICE is such a tremendously secretive organization. Their operations are so secretive. There's no way they would pay out if it wasn't to hush people. The other point that I would like to raise is, out of anybody, I can see why the remaining Danbury 11 would accept the settlement because, like, let's face it, the economy here in America isn't doing good. A lot of immigrants are going back to their native countries anyway. So it makes sense for them at this point to settle the case because the incentive to, you know, stay here and win their deportation case and their immigration case might not be as strong. So for them to accept the settlement is understandable. What I don't understand is Boughton's wanting to pay the settlement.
And not only that, it's
Well,
just
he puts that on the insurance company, but you know what's going to happen when your insurance company pays out money on your behalf? What's going to happen to your
premium
insurance
goes up.
rate, your premium, next time around?
No, and again, as you know very well, because Lynn Tabersack was on this show a few months ago, and I was on this show a few months ago talking about the firefighter lawsuit,
Yeah.
which was also settled for a pretty remarkable sum of money. And you have between that and this Danbury 11 suit, in which both, at least with the firefighter lawsuit, the city admitted to some type of quote-unquote wrongdoing. The particulars of that wrongdoing, we still don't know to this day. And this matter right here, you know, after these depositions were done, we suddenly settle. It wasn't that long after these depositions were done that the city started working out with the attorneys and they came up with a settlement. So, I mean, if you felt so strongly about your case and so strongly about your position, why did you settle? And not only that, settle, but you settled rather quickly after your depositions were done. So,
So there must have been something in the
just-
deposition.
well, I don't know if there's anything in the depositions, but I can tell you that the depositions definitely shed some light on matters that we were not given access to back in 2006 and even in 2007 when this thing was filed. And after, when this civil lawsuit was filed, this was after the attorneys for Yale retained the information from the city of Danbury via Freedom of Information requests / lawsuit, in which we were told that the city of Danbury would actually participate in this raid. They drove the undercover van. They were booked under the Danbury Police Department, the day laborers, so we were involved. Boughton's deposition gives a lot more details into what was going on with this particular matter. And
we're going to have to break it
amazing.
off there, but we're going to come back and do another show. And I want to talk, amongst other things, about the last year's gubernatorial race and how Mayor Boughton's stance on immigration may have harmed him possibly, not in Danbury, because, well, it probably didn't help him here too much. They won by a very small margin, but certainly hurt he and Tom Foley in other cities in Connecticut.
We want to talk about some of the discrepancies, too.
Yeah, we'll be back in a very short time, not for you, but for us, and do a second show. This is Professor Soup, David Stevenson, Jim Hislop, Al Robinson, and we'll be back.
Well,